Please note I use the word extrapolate incorrectly throughout this video. Please don't judge me and enjoy. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Fenix Logs. I'm your host, Fenix Rising. First off, I want to provide a brief apology for my poor explanations of certain topics from yesterday's episode. I have a tendency to become a stream of consciousness while recording, as that is the best way for me to convey my message with this bullet point style. See, I have to fill a lot of time with this content, and I will post a picture of the bullet points that I used for yesterday's episode here. And that is all that I used for generating 52 minutes worth of content yesterday. So, again, apologies for a failure to extrapolate properly on everything that I could have. But that is why I'm creating episode 2.5. The first point that I would like to bolster from yesterday's recording is the adversity that I faced from those around me. In the video, I really only used my ex-girlfriend and a friend that will remain anonymous as subjects in this explanation. However, as I said, I grew up in a very religious farm town. And as such, my family was heavily religious. It wasn't to the point of not being able to celebrate Halloween or trying to put the Christ back into Christmas or anything like that. My upbringing was actually very normal and very happy. However, there was just this huge element with mainly the male members of my family, that they were God-fearing. So when I start talking about these concepts in 2013, wanting to share with my family the information that I'm finding out, I am being met with adversity. So one brother, when I got into crystals, this was just a day. I didn't even bring this up to him. One day I went out to the mall with some friends and I bought some crystals. And when I got back, he asked me what I'd done that day, how I was doing. He was just talking to me. And I told him what we did. And he basically told me I need to take those crystals and throw them away and start praying, because those are simply trinkets. Great. I did not ask for that input, but thank you so much. That is one example that I faced. Just merely one, and I think that was summer 2013. The second is from the younger of my two older brothers. I had recently come back from tech school, and he had come over to visit. And he was worried about some of the posts that I had been making, because if it's not something I can talk to the people about around me, then at the time I was heavily into social media. I went into social media and would make some posts. And that brother wanted to pull me to the side and put his arm around me and be like, "I'm really worried about you. I think you're going down a really dark path." And I told him, why do you think that? I still believe in God, just not in a traditional Christian standpoint. And at that point, he gets way too uncomfortable and just absolutely refuses to take the conversation further. Now, when it comes to my father, there is absolutely no way that I was willing to have that conversation with him until I got to a certain point of understanding and patience in my life, because with his upbringing and the things that he's gone through and how old he is and set in his ways, it's not worth arguing with an old man who has his beliefs already set, and it's fine. If I even dared to talk about it to him back then, it would have just turned into an argument, even more so now. Now, I will say, in recent years, my oldest brother and I have reconciled. There was a good drunken night in 2021 when I was out at his house, where we had a deeply religious and spiritual conversation. How my belief really tied into his, and sure, he prays and I speak to the universe, but essentially it's not that different. We're still talking to a higher power, where I am communicating with Source. He is talking to what he perceives as God. We both are talking to what we perceive as God. The difference is that, and this is where we finally came to a reconciliation in this degree, and we're able to bridge the gap, is I was able to tell him that my problem comes with organized religion as a whole, and how it is used as a form of control over the weak-minded and the scared. And he couldn't argue with that. After having that conversation and talking about our common grounds, where we differ slightly, and how I wasn't condemning him in any way or trying to bash him for that, and really what we were able to talk about my problems with it, he completely understood. My other brother, on the other hand, he's getting there. He's gotten to the point where he's not so fearful to discuss the topic, and what he really wants to do is have a more structured conversation, because and this is one reason why I decided to do these logs. I don't know if you can tell or not, but when I have a tendency to speak, I am long drawn out. I prefer writing, and I've preferred the written word over talking on this freestyle and this communication, because a regular conversation is just freestyling without pressure. But all of a sudden you start to try to broadcast an idea, or you try to give a speech, and you have a lot of people listening, you suddenly feel that tension and you start to fumble the words, and if someone's semi-apprehensive, they're going to break right through that silence. So one thing I really would like to do is work on my delivery, on my gait, if you will. The way that I talk. I really would like to just work at it. So while these first 2 episodes are, a little rough, I will only get better as I go on, because this message is bigger than me, and this is the most I've enjoyed producing content in the longest time. So I will continue there. Looping back to my brother, things are not as bad as what they once were. And he's willing to talk about it now. It just has to be more structured. We will get there eventually. I'm sure it will come up, because I have a tendency to talk about this stuff a lot. Because you have a tendency to do that when something saves your life. The next thing I want to talk about is this past summer, when I brought the topic up to my dad. It was intense, to put it bluntly. It was a very intense conversation, but as I said in yesterday's log, when you talk about beliefs, it's going to get intense, and that was one of the moments, the solidifying moments of that was over the summer. Now, it did get to the point where he was getting, he gets really tense with his body language and kind of wild and gets very aggressive in his vocal cords. So I basically had to tell him at one point, like, look, we're not having this discussion again until you learn how to speak from a place of respect. It feels weird having to say that to your parent, but that's what happened. And from that point, I was able to revisit it later, circle back, tell him where I was coming from. He told me where he was coming from. And we agreed this is probably not going to be a conversation that we will have again, because I enjoy the conversation of comparing and contrasting religion to spirituality. However, when you have a very God-fearing individual, that is not the time to do it. There are times and places, and as I said yesterday, I'm not here to bash it over your head or force it upon anyone. I'm just here to spread the message if you're looking for it. So while I can steer the conversation in that way and want to have that conversation, he might not want it. And at that point, you just move on. It's totally fine with that. So that will conclude the extrapolation of adversity. And now we are moving on to the second half of this video, which is answers to the higher concept question that I had yesterday. That concept, if you do not remember, was there was the higher self concept, and then there was the experience I had last week of sending myself, a past version of myself, healing energy. And I came across a video from the Alchemist channel that I linked yesterday. A fantastic source that I just discovered, and it was basically talking about the first wave of ascension and how we have essentially gone through the second wave of ascension. We've had enough of those lifetimes where we're focused on the external manifestations, and now we are focused internally on ourselves and healing. And I cannot help but feel like I am part of that first wave of ascension, just based on the description of those types of beings and what they go through. So essentially with that is that we are growing into our higher selves. If you remember, I said yesterday that it is inevitable that we become that being, that higher version of ourselves, because it already exists. And basically what she said, now I'm not going to say it as well as she can, but basically we are channeling more of that oversoul, if you will, that existence that of our higher self. We are expanding our awareness. We are becoming that. And in a sense, I was able to make that connection with a past version of myself and just send it that way. So when she was talking about that and how we are expanding and becoming more of our higher selves, it really just clicked with me. And I'm like, okay, I was literally talking about this yesterday. Incredible stuff. Again, incredible. It had impeccable timing, which, that's how these angel numbers work. That's how divine timing works. Like, this happens time and time again. And if it happens enough times, you know that it's not an accident. It's not a coincidence, especially when you are in tune with that and focusing on growing. Not to mention, it eliminated a talking point that I had for a video I have coming up, going over QHHT, or quantum healing hypnosis therapy. That is, if you don't know, that is basically what Dolores Cannon developed back in the 80s, I believe. It walks people through the death experience in a hypnotic state, and she was able to extract a lot of information, talking directly with spirit, and it's a whole lot that I could get into. But what you need to know in relation to me in this video right now is that it is the basis of my journey for the last 3 years, and I find myself at a bridge. I'm starting this journey now with this audio log series. And then I come across The Alchemist when I'm struggling. And then I have a experience last week with a concept I'm very familiar with through QHHT and all of Dolores Cannon's books. And then I get an answer from this YouTube channel that I just discovered 2 days ago. So, to be quite frank, it is impossible that all of this is just a mere coincidence. The likelihood of that is improbable in my mind. And I know I just used impossible and improbable interchangeably, and they are not interchangeable. However, I will chalk that up to my failures as a brand new broadcaster. So hey, take it or leave it. Alright everyone, that is going to conclude this short addendum to yesterday's episode. I just wanted to come in and bolster a few points that I felt like I failed to extrapolate on properly or actually convey. If this was absolutely unnecessary, please feel free to let me know. Or if you felt that it added that, let me know as well. As I continue on this journey, on progressing here with this series, I would like to make it as best of an experience as I possibly can. So every little bit of knowledge helps. So I want to thank you for listening. This is Fenix Rising, reminding you to always embrace the light and spread the light. I'll see you next time.